The title of this morning's sermon is Nehemiah's Merry Christmas. Nehemiah has a very, 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 I think, wonderfully profound Merry Christmas wish he wants to give you this morning. And I know for a fact that Christmas is not all bells and twinkles and happiness for many of us. For me, Christmas is full of wonderful memories, full of wonderful traditions, but yet hard things always happen around Christmas for some reason. Or maybe they're always happening, but we feel them more around Christmas because we feel like things should be right, and they aren't. My grandpa died just a few weeks shy of Christmas. And the first Christmas without Grandpa was wrong. It was just wrong because Grandpa wasn't there. In my pastoral ministry, it's weird. The week of Christmas, stuff goes crazy. Suicides, car wrecks, marriages on the rocks. I've spent Christmas Eve on the phone with a wife who's bawling as her husband texts a woman half his age in another city, planning their next tryst. Christmas is hard. I get that. And so for you, if Christmas is hard, because of past sin or circumstances or events or whatever it may be going on right now, like I want you to receive a word of encouragement this morning. Because one of the things I love about the Bible is that it's a real book. It's not a fairy tale. Now, we've been in the book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah, remember, the walls have been down for 141 years, and he asked the king of Susa if he can go and restore the walls, so he travels about 1,000 miles to Jerusalem, and he accomplishes in 52 days what they had not done previously in 141 years. You see, the people of God represent the glory of God on earth, and they had profaned his holiness and his name and his glory by rebelling and sinning against him and letting the temple go and the Levites go and breaking the Sabbath laws and intermarrying with pagan neighbors. And so he disciplines them and he sends them off into captivity as a loving father would discipline a wayward son. And then he begins the process of restoring and bringing them back through the leader Nehemiah as he rebuilds the walls of Jerusalem. And we see the first half of the book focusing on preparing a place for the people. And then in chapter 8 it transitions and the book of the law is read, and Nehemiah realizes that there's not just physical brokenness that needs restoring in Jerusalem, there's spiritual brokenness that needs restoring in Jerusalem. And so they read the book of the law and they repent and they return to God and they recovenant themselves to God. They recovenant to mind the temple and to honor the Levitical code and to keep the Sabbath holy and to not let their children go to the pagan gods, but to raise them up in the fear and admonishment of God. And there's this great, incredible revival moment in chapters 8, 9, and 10, probably one of the greatest revivals, spiritual renewal times recorded in all of the Old Testament. And then Nehemiah governs them for 12 years. And then he returns home according to his word that he gave the king when he left. And he returns home, and then sometime later, 1 to 7 years, we're not exactly sure, he comes back to Jerusalem for a visit, and what does he find? The wheels have fallen completely off of the train. And I'm not talking like a flat tire. I'm talking like they have blown off, and this thing has catapulted off the edge into the ditch, and it's fiery explosion. It is worst case scenario, DEFCON 5, could not be any worse. And what I love about the Bible is that it's real. If the Bible was a fairy tale, it would have ended in chapter 12, where we were last week, in the celebration, the massive epic worship service they planned that was highly choreographed, and a choir on this wall and a choir on that wall, and the wall that the critics had said would never get built, the wall that Sanballat and Tobiah had said, if you build it, a fox will jump on it and it'll fall down, it'll be so weak. They stacked thousands of singers on it and go, oh yeah? Well, here it is. Read it and weep. And they sing glory to God, and they have this massive epic worship service dedicating the wall of the temple. And if the Bible was a fairy tale, it would end there with the words, and they lived happily ever after. Twinkle toes and fairy dust. But you and I both know that's not how life works. Life is full of brokenness. Life is full of heartache. Life is full of disappointment. Life is full of right turns you were expecting to go left. On Thursday, I was having a great day Thursday. Sharon calls me. She's crying. Why are you crying? I just wrecked the van. You just what? Are you okay? Yes, I'm okay. Are the kids okay? Yes, they're okay. Why did you do that? And my defense, I covered the bases to make sure that they were all okay, and then I went right to the next logical conclusion. Why would you wreck the van? It's not as if the snowbank jumped out in front of you. I got good tires on. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, no, how fast are you going? Why did that happen? Well, where are you parked now? Well, move it. Well, I tried to move it. It's loud and it's broken. I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? I was having such a good day. And now this vehicle-less, I take it down, $4,000 to fix. The van's not worth $5,000. I'm not going to spend. I'm like, I got to go find a dog sled now to work with the rest of the winter. Woman, I love you, but why? You know? And all these wonderful conversations you have, and like, so you get home, honey, it's okay. I'm just glad you're safe. You know, but you're a phone call away from life changing. And the phone call could have been, this is State Patrol, and we're calling to inform you your wife's been in an accident. You need to come to the hospital right away. Perspective, right? Fix the stupid van. Who gives a flying flip? My kids are okay. My wife is safe. The most precious relationships I have are intact. But I can get bent out of shape pretty quick. Life, man, just doesn't go as we plan. The Bible gets that because the Bible's a real book about real people who serve a real God and live in the real world. And so today, you're not going to get this fairy tale picture of Christmas, and if you follow Jesus, it'll all go well. No, Jesus gets that you live in a broken place. And so for this Christmas, he's going to wish you a Merry Christmas through his servant Nehemiah, and I hope you receive it with great hope, because there is hope even when Christmas doesn't go how you wished it would. Nehemiah chapter 13 is where we're going to start. Nehemiah is going to come back, and he's going to find his work in shambles, and he could throw up his hands in despair, or he could raise his hands in battle, and we're going to see what he does. This is why I love Nehemiah. He's a dude's dude. He's a man's man, and it's a picture of what a man who has a burning zeal for the holiness of God does when he encounters sin, especially in the lives of people who should know better. So it's a picture of what does a man that has a burning zeal for the holiness of God do when he encounters sin, especially in the lives of those who know better. We see the first problem he runs into is the temple is desecrated. Chapter 13, verse 1. On that day they read from the book of Moses in the hearing of the people, and it was found written that no Ammonite or Moabite should ever enter the assembly of God, for they did not meet the people of Israel with bread and water, but hired Balaam against them to curse them. Yet our God turned the curse into a blessing. As soon as the people heard the law, they separated from Israel all those of foreign descent. Verse 4. Now before this, Eliashib, the priest, he's the high priest, most important man of all of Israel, who was appointed over the chambers of the house of our God, and who was related to Tobiah, prepared for Tobiah a large chamber where they had previously put the grain offering, the frankincense, the vessels, and the tithes of grain, wine, and oil, which were given by commandment to the Levites, the singers, and the gatekeepers, and the contributions for the priests. While this was taking place, I was not in Jerusalem, for in the 32nd year of Artaxerxes, king of Babylon, I went to the king. And after some time I asked leave of the king to come back and visit Jerusalem. And I then discovered the evil that Eliashib had done for Tobiah, preparing for him a chamber in the courts of the house of God. Problem number one, wheel number one that comes off the Israel train here is that they have desecrated the temple. Now, why is that a big deal? Here's why this is a big deal. The temple was designed by God to be the place that not just represented the presence of God, but housed the very presence of God on the earth. It was the most important piece of real estate on the planet. And there were very, very clear instructions that surrounded that temple in order to maintain a sense of holiness for the God who would reside inside it. And so the temple was built out. The Levites were given the roles of priests. They would be the intermediaries between God and man, and they would offer sacrifices day and night. They never stopped offering sacrifices because the people's sins was never fully covered by the blood of goats and animals. And so their job was to provide sacrifices to withhold the wrathful and righteous, just hand of God for punishing those who sin. And there would be a high priest that was appointed to oversee all of the functionings of that temple place that was at the center and the nerve center of the people of Israel, God's people. And there was a place in the very inner circle of that temple called the Holy of Holies. And this high priest, who was the most important person in all of Israel, was allowed to go into the Holy of Holies and offer a sacrifice one time a year. And he would prepare for it all year, and when he would go in, there were ceremonial washings and cleansings and preparations for it, because all this is symbolizing and showing the people of Israel that God is not like anyone else you approach. He is other, he is holy, and so he would go in one time a year with a cord wrapped around his leg, just in case he didn't survive in the presence of the Shekinah glory of God. Because he is so holy, he is so other, that a human sometimes could not live in his presence. And so if he had a heart attack, died on the spot, they could fish him out so he wouldn't smell up the Holy of Holies for the rest of the year. And then outside the Holy of Holies, there was this next ring that was the holy place, and there were only allowed priests in there whose name's been drawn out of the hat for that year. And they'd offer specific sacrifices and offerings and care for that. And then there was the outer court from there that the rest of the priests functioned in, and the outer court from there where only Jewish men were allowed to enter on certain days of the week. The point of all of this is to show that there are no Gentiles welcome here in this place unless you are God's children being covered by the sacrifices of God's priests. You are not allowed into the presence of God. That's the point. Nehemiah comes back and not only has Eliashib, the high priest, let the temple completely go, he took the storeroom where they put all the grain and all the offerings that people would bring in to provide for the Levites to do their work, the utensils, the tools, where they kept all that stuff. He sold all of that on eBay, and he moved in there a Gentile. And not just any Gentile. This is Tobiah, the one who was one of the most outspoken critics against God's man Nehemiah and God's people and God himself. So Eliashib, the great high priest, this is a colossal fail. Not only is he letting the temple just completely go to the weeds, he is allowing a Gentile to further desecrate the temple by moving in and throwing parties in an apartment in the basement of the temple. Nehemiah shows up, and he's not happy. And we see a picture of what a man who is zealous for the holiness of God does when he encounters sin, especially in the lives of those who should know better. Verse 8, and I was very angry, understatement of the century. You can't catch the thrust of the Hebrew phrase, he was very angry. I was livid, my top blew off, I could not believe and fathom what my eyes were seeing, and I threw all the household furniture of Tobiah out of the chamber. I love Nehemiah. Okay? I love Nehemiah. Then I gave orders, and they cleansed the chambers. Notice, not just Tobiah's chamber, but all the chambers. Fumigate the whole thing, right? And I brought back there the vessels of the house of God with the grain offering and the frankincense. I love this. He walks in. We don't need to hold a committee meeting. We don't need to pray and fast about this. In no uncertain terms, you clean out that pagan Gentiles crap from the temple, or I will kick your priestly hiney across the city. No convening of committees here. God has decisively spoken on this matter. How you're acting is desecrating the holiness of God. And I'm telling you, you got 3 seconds to fix it. I love Nehemiah. I love this guy. I mean, this guy, later he's gonna beat somebody up. He's going to scalp a few folks. I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. He just goes flat out UFC on these guys. I mean, like, if I could do this in a counseling session, we might get more done around here. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, lean across the table. Pow! You know what I mean? Like, go fix it. Call me when you're done. I don't know if Nehemiah was big physically or just big in personality, but he comes in, Tobiah, this revered and feared Gentile, is moved in, and he's like, I want his TV and his sofa and his fine china and his DVR machine and his couch and everything on the street in 5 minutes or else. And out the window, boom, starts like couches, boom, and TVs, and sound systems, boom, and Apple computer. I mean, it's just this great scene, right? And people are like, whoa, what happened? Nehemiah showed up back in town. And I would love to have been there when Tobiah got home that night. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, man, come over, dude. Let's do a party night. Yeah, man, bring the keg. All right, yeah, woo. You know, dude. Keys in, opens his door, and his apartment full of grain. to the ceiling. He's like, what the? Nehemiah's back in town. And he's taking all the wrongs and he's making them right. Wheel number one that fell off the Israel wagon. The temple is desecrated, but it gets worse. The Levites are forsaken. Verse 10, I also found out that the portions of all the Levites that had not been given to them, so that the Levites and the singers who did the work had fled each to his own field. So I confronted the officials. Literally, this is verbal assault. I confronted the officials, the leaders who were responsible for taking care of the Levites, and I said, why is the house of God forsaken? The reason that language is important is because he's repeating to them what they promised they would not do. You remember in chapter 10, verse 39, they said, we covenant not to forsake the house of God. This is their own words. 2 chapters later, why did you forsake the house of God again? And I gathered them together and I set them in their stations. This is why it would be a problem. The people of God were to bring tithes and offerings to the temple. 10% first fruit, and then another 10% for the ceremonial celebrations throughout the year, and another 5 to 10% for mercy needs. So the tithe in Israel was about 30%, 25 to 30%. And a portion of the tithe was to care for the needs of the Levites because they had been set apart by God as the tribe, one of the 12 tribes, as the tribe, the people, who would be charged with the most precious and sacred work of doing the work of sacrifices and being the intermediaries between God and man. But they wouldn't have time to work for themselves, and so people would tithe and provide food and take care of their needs. So if the people wouldn't tithe, then the Levites would either A, starve, or have to go to work for themselves, meaning they would have to neglect the work of the temple. If they neglect the work of the temple, if the priests aren't there doing their thing, no sacrifices are being made. If no sacrifices are being made, wrath isn't being absorbed, sin isn't being covered, we can't commune with God. If we can't commune with God, there is no relationship. If there's no relationship, we can't worship Him. No Levites equals no worship among the people of God to their God in heaven. And so Nehemiah's looking at this going, the temple is desecrated, the Levites have been forsaken, and he's adding it up going, you mean to tell me there has been no corporate gathering and worshiping of the God of the universe, our creator, our provider, Jehovah Jireh? We haven't been worshiping Him for how long? This is wheels off. Massive, massive fail. What does the man of zeal do? And I gathered them together, and I set them in their stations. Then all Judah brought the tithe of the grain, wine, and oil into the storehouses. Now again, understatement of the year. I don't know how he did it, but he was either big man physically or big man personality-wise. He walks in and goes, you mean you have not been tithing for how long? Fix it today. You over there, you're not in leadership now, you're back in leadership. Tell the people the tithe is due tomorrow. And they came. Man of influence, man of action. Restoring the temple work. And I appointed as treasurer over the storehouses Shelemiah the priest, Zadok the scribe, and Pedaiah of the Levites, and as their assistant Hanan the son of Zakur, son of Mattaniah, for they were considered reliable, which would be nice for a change around here, and their duty was to distribute to their brothers. Remember me, O my God, concerning this, and do not wipe out my good deeds that I have done for the house of my God and for His service. Burning on Nehemiah's heart wasn't so much the fact that, the poor children of Levites are going hungry at night, but that the worship of God was being systematically ignored through not providing for the priests. That was the issue. But it gets worse. Not only was the temple desecrated and the Levites forsaken, the Sabbath is broken. Look at verse 15. In those days I saw in Judah people treading wine presses on the Sabbath and bringing in heaps of grain and loading them on donkeys, and also wine, grapes, figs, and all kinds of loads which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. And I warned them on that day when they sold food. Tyrians also, who lived in the city, brought in fish and all kinds of goods and sold them on the Sabbath to the people of Judah in Jerusalem itself. They didn't have the wherewithal to go sin outside the city. They got the gall to sin right in the center of the city. Then I confronted the nobles of Judah, and I said to them, What is this evil thing that you are doing, profaning the Sabbath day? Did not your fathers act in this way, and did not our God bring all this disaster we've been trying to turn around on us and on this city? Now you are bringing more wrath on Israel by profaning the Sabbath. Why was this a big deal? Because God had set his people apart to be different from the world as a representative of his glory and his kingdom and who he is like and what he is like. And they were to rest one day a week, just like God rested in creation, to show that he was good enough and strong enough and powerful enough to provide for them even if they didn't work. And God set this day aside so that they could worship him without interruption and put the shovels and the horse plows to rest. And it was a great act of faith. God will provide for us even if we don't plow our fields today. The pagans may worry about how they'll be clothed or where their food will come from tomorrow, but our God says, don't worry about your clothing or where food will come from. Work hard and then rest well, worship rightly, and I will provide for your every need. And God loved his people and didn't want them to be burnt out and worked hard, and so he said, rest and enjoy each other and enjoy me and enjoy life and live in the rhythm of work and rest. And the whole sermon is wrapped up in this principle of Sabbath rest. And they completely ignored it. Well, the economy got a little tight. Hey, they got a good deal down at Pybus, and Costco's got us running a special, and we're going to run down there and get some food. And he goes, is it a sin to shop at Costco now? No. But back then, under the law of God, the Sabbath was a holy day, and they're completely desecrating it by doing commerce on God's holy day. What does the man of zeal do? Verse 19. As soon as it began to grow dark at the gates of Jerusalem before the Sabbath, I commanded that the doors should be shut and gave orders that they should not be opened until after the Sabbath, about 6 o'clock Friday night to about 6 o'clock Saturday night. And I stationed some of my servants at the gates that no load might be brought in on the Sabbath. Here's my favorite part. Then the merchants and sellers and all kinds of wares lodged outside Jerusalem once or twice. Okay, so we get it. We can't sell in the side city. We're just going to camp just outside the city and see if we can catch some stragglers, right? What does Nehemiah say? Man, I wish I could do this in counseling. But I warned them and said to them, why do you lodge outside the wall and tempt my people to sin? If you do so again, I will lay my hands on you. What's he saying in the vernacular? You tempt my people to sin again and desecrate the Sabbath day, I will Chuck Norris your face. Right? I will deal with you ever so swiftly, and I will holly holm you, and pow, and you'll be done. And they're like, what's the next sentence? From that time on, they did not come back on the Sabbath. I love that. I don't know if he put on his muscle t-shirt when he went out there, you know what I mean? Or had some of his, I don't know what he did, but when Nehemiah says something, it sticks, And I love that. And I would love in the counseling session sometimes to be like, hey, lean up here, buddy. Look close, can you hear me? You sure you like that again? I'll lay my hands on you. I might just try it sometime this next week, see how it goes. So if you're that person, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to stave off counseling phone calls here. So hopefully this is helping. But pastors sometimes read Nehemiah and they're like, hero! A man of zeal, when encountering sin and people who should know better, responds appropriately. If they care about the holiness of God. If they care about the holiness and reputation of God. Verse 22, then I commanded the Levites that they should purify themselves and come and guard the gates to keep the Sabbath day. Remember this also in my favor, O my God, and spare me according to the greatness of your steadfast love. The second prayer Nehemiah has uttered, and you get this sense that he's walking through Israel going, are you kidding me, the temple? I'm not processing this, the Levites. Are you working on the Sabbath? And he's fearing that God might right then decide to be done with mercy and just act in justice and wipe them all out. He's like, God, remember me, what team I'm on, what side of the line I'm on. There's this holy trembling and fear from the man of zeal going, God, I realize we're profaning your name, and I recognize that you have not wiped us off the planet. Is mercy undeserved? Holy fear of a holy God in the life of Nehemiah as he observes rampant, rank sin in the lives of those who should know better. But it gets worse. How could it get any worse? I don't know. It gets worse. Nehemiah is soon to find out that not only is the temple been desecrated and the Levites have been forsaken, and not only has the Sabbath been profaned, he realizes that the covenant children have been turned away. Look at chapter 13, verse 23. In those days also I saw the Jews who had married women of Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab, and half of their children spoke the language of Ashdod, and they could not speak the language of Judah, but the language of each people. And I confronted them, and I cursed them, and I beat some of them, and I pulled out their hair. Really, Nehemiah? A little over the top? Here's what was burning in the soul of Nehemiah. If you think Nehemiah overreacted to those in the Sabbath, think back to another man who would come later, who walked into the temple and saw that it had been turned into a den of thieves. How did that man respond? Jesus overturned the tables of the moneylenders, shouting in their face, veins popping in his neck. This is the house of my God. It is to be a house of prayer and reverent worship, and you have turned it into a den of commerce and thieves. And then Nehemiah sees that the children are being turned away. And he goes and he beats them up and he pulls their hair out. Really, Nehemiah? What did Jesus say? Woe to you who cause one of the least of these to stumble. It'd be better for you, you little worm, if a millstone was tied around your neck and you were thrown off Otabashan Bridge in the Columbia River than to cause the little one to stumble. You say, well, how they cause them to stumble? Here's how they cause them to stumble. Jewish men had consciously and willfully married pagan worshiping women. This isn't a text against, interracial marriage. It's not at all. This is a text about Jewish men covenanted to God by their word, signed on a dotted line, who had willfully, consciously married and covenanted together with women who openly worshiped pagan gods, even when they had formerly, a few months ago, promised they would never do that, and now as a result, their offspring, half of whom don't even speak the language of Hebrew anymore, but rather that of the Ashdods and the Moabites, by definition, pagans. Here's why that's a big deal. If your child can't speak Hebrew, he can't read Hebrew. If your child can't read Hebrew, she has no access to understand the written, beautiful law of God. If they have no access to the law of God, they can't worship God rightly. They can't worship God rightly. They will have no fellowship with God. This is DEFCON 5, the seeds of apostasy have been sown. We are one generation from total and complete paganization of Israel. This is as bad as it gets. The parents have willfully walked away from God and indifferently turned their children over to pagan idols. This cannot continue. And so Nehemiah goes ballistic. And he beats up the dads who lacked courage and lacked resolve and lacked conviction and married the pagan gal because she looked nice in a burqa, It's like, hey, man, whatever. What happened here, guys? No conviction? And then he rips their hair out because for a Jewish man to have the hair of his head ripped out or the hair of his beard ripped out would be the ultimate act of public shame. Nehemiah is saying, I'm trying to get you to feel what you should feel for how you've been living, and you're not. You're profaning God's name. You've let the temple go to the weeds. The Levites are having to work to survive, so there's no longer corporate worship going on. The Sabbath is just another day of the week to go out and do your stuff, and your children don't even know how to say the name of God in their language. You should be ashamed of yourself, and you aren't, so let me help you feel it. And I made them take an oath in the name of God, saying, you shall not give your daughters to their sons, or take their daughters for your sons or for yourselves. Did not Solomon, history lesson, did not Solomon, king of Israel, sin on account of such women? Remember Solomon? Oh, the wisest guy to walk the planet, a lot smarter than you, but even he couldn't fight off the wiles of the pagan women, and it led to his destruction. We're here in large part because of his sin, and now you're doing the same thing? Can you sense Nehemiah's holy zeal and frustration? I gave my life to working to bring about the restoration of you sorry sapsuckers, and now we're right back to where we started. Or probably worse. Because at least when we were sinning in Babylon, we were in Babylon. But now you're sinning in Jerusalem, God's city. Look at King Solomon. Among the nations there was no king like him, and he was beloved by his God, and God made him king over all Israel. Nevertheless, foreign women made even him to sin. Shall we then listen to you and do all this great evil and act treacherously against our God by marrying foreign women? And just when you thought it couldn't get any worse. Verse 28. If you're like me, you ever read a good Louis L'Amour book? If you haven't, we might need to revoke your membership here. But when you read a good Louis L'Amour book, you're like 3 pages from the end. You're like, how is this going to end up? And then you're 2 pages. It's like, how is this going to get up? And you're on the last page, and you're like, good heavens, how is this going to end? And somehow, in 3 paragraphs, he wraps it all up, and you're like, yeah! That's a good book, right? And so we're coming to the end of Nehemiah, and it's like, we got 3 verses left. How is this going to turn around? Because right now, the altimeter meter is spinning, and the plane's like, and we're like, beep, 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 mountain approaching quickly. How is he going to pull out of this one? You're making an assumption that he does. And just when we thought it couldn't get any worse, verse 28 comes along. And one of the sons of Jehoiada, the son of Eliashib, the high priest, was the son-in-law of Sanballat the Horonite. This whole thing is rotten to the core. Even the high priest's grandson married the pagan daughter of my arch nemesis, Sanballat, the man who criticized and connived and cajoled and planned to assassinate me and has only worked against us, and I leave for a few months and somehow he gets on the inside. It's like the final insult. The final insult. Oh yeah, and by the way, the high priest's grandson, he's related to Sanballat now. Really? How does all this happen? I'll tell you how it happens. Tolerance overtakes truth. Let's just be tolerant. Nehemiah was kind of a hard-headed, rigid, narrow-minded dude. Truth is relative, right? And these are nice folks, and they have great perspectives too, and some of their orientations are different, but that's okay, because all truth is truth, and all roads get to God, and let's not be so harsh and narrow-minded. Let's be loving and diverse and tolerant. And tolerance overtakes truth to the point where they can desecrate God's word and not even blink. It happens when people overtake God, when people are more important than God. Well, I won't want to offend Tobiah and say, no, he can't throw his race parties in the basement of the temple, so maybe we should just let him move in. Well, Sanballat's daughter, she is a nice gal, and boy, she cooked a mean apple pie, and maybe it'd work out. When people overtake God, intolerance overtakes truth, and when indifference overtakes passion. There were things going on here that should have shaken them to the core that wasn't even bothering them. And many of us in our life walk through life regularly sinning against other people in ways that should cause us to tremble and turn to God in holy fear and repentance, and we're not even awake to it. We're totally dead. And one of my prayers as a result of this Christmas message is that God would awaken some of you to those things that profane his name that you haven't even seen on your radar. You've been totally indifferent to it, and that God would raise the bar of zeal and passion in our church family for His holiness. Not so that we could go out and beat up other people like the self-righteous older brother, but that we might more rightly and purely and humbly repent before God ourselves and see ourselves as the chief Israelite sinning against the holy things of God. You say, well, what can we learn from Nehemiah? Aren't there some leadership lessons here? And I pulled some out. I don't think I like them. I'll give them to you quickly. How's that for undersell? What do we learn? Finishing well matters. Nehemiah's in his mid to late 60s. He could have come back and been like, really? Okay, God, for the record, I tried. I gave it a good shot. And if you'll check the record, God, we did have a good run. For like 12 years, it was awesome. 12 years of awesomeness with my name on the top of it. So keep that in mind, and I'm going to kick back and just kind of wash my hands of it. No, Nehemiah knows it's not how you start, it's how you finish. The 12-year run we had means nothing if this is how we're going to finish. The 15 years of good marriage you've had means nothing if you're not going to finish it strong. I mean, apply it to whatever you want, right? It's not, the good run that counts. It's how you finish that counts. We learn that without constant care, weeds grow. I mean, there's no world on this planet where you can do anything meaningful and not take care of it and it not go to pot. You try to grow a carrot, non-threatening, very nice, simple orange carrot, and that thing will get choked out by weeds in a matter of weeks unless you take care of the weeds. You can't plant a garden, walk away, come back, think it's all going to be hunky-dory because we live in a fallen world that's shot through with sin. Nehemiah leads, he's on it, he's taking care of it, he's wrapping the vision and casting the vision, and he leaves in a matter of months, they're off the rails. Because where you don't tend, weeds grow. We learn that bad apples spoil the whole barrel. Holy smokes, do they ever. There's a reason Paul said, warn a divisive person once, warn them twice, and then have nothing to do with them. Because if you don't, they will poison the entire flock. I got to tour Stamilt warehouses a few weeks ago with some great men that oversee the organization. It's an incredible organization, a great business that does wonderful things in our valley. It's got a great ethos, a great culture. Mike Taylor got baptized last week, and Dave Milheiser and Eric Ware and some other guys are responsible for that culture, and they're wonderful, godly men who are leading with integrity, and they walked me through this warehouse. It's an incredible experience. I mean, the journey of an apple is like a whole other sermon. It's crazy how much work it takes to get from the apple to the field to the storehouse, and the store is crazy. We're walking through, and there's this massive, lines, and it gets loaded here and floats in the water there, and people touching, taking care of it, and machines taking 39 pictures of it and just telling it where to go in the sorting line. It's just bananas. But the first thing they do when the apple hits the sorting tram, whatever they call it, they take the bad apples out. There's this big box of nasty rotten apples because in Mike Taylor's words, if you leave this rotten apple in, it'll spoil the whole bunch. Sort of like people. The agriculture industry gets it. Do we get it? One bad apple spoils the whole bunch. You may think you're gossiping and slandering and malicious talking and whatever aren't a big deal. They're a huge deal. Each of us has a responsibility for the health of the whole by guarding our tongue, walking in wisdom, and obeying Jesus so that we don't become the weak link that poisons the whole lot. Because one bad apple, like Sanballat or Tobiah, it's not that big a deal, really. All the wheels off. All the wheels off. We're learning even the best leaders, best ever, sometimes fail. Nehemiah is arguably the best leader in the Old Testament. His leadership strength, his leadership instincts, his organizational skills, his motivational skills, his vision casting abilities, his faith and hope and trust and confidence in a sovereign God. He is a man of action. He is a spiritual man. He is a man who can get things done and command the respect of legions. And he's a man who gets on his face and repents before God in dust and ashes. He's a man's man. He's a dude's dude. And even his best efforts result in chapter 13. And the reason I highlight that for us here is simply that I know there are many parents that carry undue guilt for the rebellion of their children in their adult years that they should not carry. I'm not relieving you of responsibility. I'm not saying you shouldn't own your stuff and repent where you sinned and call your adult children and apologize and repent and do all you can to make restoration. But at the end of the day, your children make their own decisions. Yes, you shape their heart. Yes, you guide their life. Yes, you model for them. And if there's lack of integrity in your life, and if you're a hypocrite, that will profoundly shape their life. But at the end of the day, they're responsible to God for their actions. And I've lost track of older parents with adult children whose children go off the rails and they carry this undue need of guilt. And I'm saying God and his had 2 children in the garden where no sin was present and he lost them. Jesus had 12 disciples and he lost one to betrayal. You do your part, you own your stuff, you'll be held accountable to God for how you acted, but recognize that even the best leaders' best efforts sometimes fail. And you should not carry that guilt. That can be taken wrong, so don't twist what I'm saying, but I hope for some of you that's landing home and encouraging you. Lastly, we learn that the heart always wins. It just does. Rules and external laws will accomplish a little bit for a short period of time, but eventually and always and at some point, the heart will come through, the heart will win, and the heart will get what it wants. We committed to this, we covenanted to this, we signed on a dotted line. All the laws were there and present, enforcing themselves on us, but at the end of the day, we ended up doing what we wanted. What's the big takeaway from the book of Nehemiah? There is no law or lawgiver or law overseer that can change the heart of fallen man. What we need is not the law, what we need is a new heart. Not rules trying to govern a broken heart, but a new creation where a new heart is given. In parenting, don't live under the facade that a house full of rules will raise a tender-hearted child. You may raise a performer. You may raise a rule keeper where you teach them to obey rules for reward or obey rules and be punished, but you will not lead them to the gospel. You will not tenderize their heart to the things of God. And I guarantee you at some point they'll either do one of 2 things. Be really good at obeying laws and rules and put their hope in that obedience for their salvation, or they'll be like, screw that, I'm going to do my own thing, and they will walk away from you so fast your head will spin. Either way, laws and rules don't cut it. God's called you to shepherd and to shape the heart of your child, not train him to obey rules. And even at the end of the day, a parent realizes, holy smokes, I can't do in the heart of my child what needs to be done. Because what's needed is that they're given a new heart. What's needed is not that they're given rules that keep them suppressed, but rather that they're given new desires to want to do different things. The heart always gets what it wants. Israelites prove that over and over again. So what's Nehemiah's Merry Christmas? You're like, man, I think this is the most depressing Christmas message I have ever heard. I only go to church twice a year, and I thought I'd try this one. I am never coming back. Pastor's shirt wasn't even tucked in. I know. Nehemiah's Merry Christmas? How is Nehemiah wishing me a Merry Christmas? Look how it ends. Verse 30. Thus I cleansed them from everything foreign, and I established the duties of the priests and Levites, each in his own work, and I provided for the wood offering at the appointed times and for the first fruits. Remember me, O God, for my good. Do you get the sense of hopelessness Nehemiah's expressing? So I did the same thing I did last time. And how many of us here think it's going to work? At some point, Nehemiah is going to leave or die, and it's going to go back to the wolves. And if you read the Old Testament, what you will see over and over and over again is that the people fail to live up to the standard of the law. If you were today, left to right, to read the Old Testament, your big takeaway, you'd come away from it, you going, is there anyone who can obey the law? because we made a covenant with Moses, and 3 days later we worshiped a calf we made with our own gold jewelry we boiled down. And then we made a covenant with David, we broke that. We made a covenant with Solomon, we broke that. We made a covenant with King Hezekiah, we broke that. We made a covenant with Josiah, we broke that. We made a covenant with Asa, we broke that. And now we get to Nehemiah, and we get the greatest picture of spiritual reformation and revival in the history of the Old Testament. 3 chapters dedicated to song and dance and the public reading of the Word and public repentance of sin. Choreographed worship service, 2 choirs on the rebuilt walls. I mean, this is like Victory Day on steroids. It could not get any better. We finally arrived. We're valuing the temple. We're valuing the law. We're valuing God's word. We're going to follow him, obey him, worship him, love him. We won't let the temple go. We won't desecrate the Levites. We won't ignore the Sabbath. We won't marry pagan women. And 2 years later, they're in it full steam. What you might not know is that the story of Nehemiah is at the chronological end of the Old Testament. So in your Bible, it's not at the end of the Old Testament. Malachi is at the end of the Old Testament. But Malachi actually came and prophesied to Israel between Nehemiah's first leaving and second coming. And so the book of Nehemiah, the story of Nehemiah, is the chronological end of the Old Testament. And we get to the precipice of the Old Testament, and we stand on the horizon of the Old Testament, looking out into the future, going, is there anyone who can obey the law? Is there anyone who can obey the law? Is there anyone who can rightly and perfectly and wholly obey God's law? Anyone? 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 Is there anyone who can secure God's blessing? 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 And then for 400 years, intertestamental silence. For 400 years, not a word, not an answer given to the question. Nehemiah, the greatest leader to lead the Old Testament people of God, ends in total disarray, total failure, wheels off. I don't know what else to do, Lord. I did my best. Silence. And then the next words we hear 400 years later. And you shall find a baby wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. And you shall call his name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sin. And behold, there was a massive choir of angels singing, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace upon whom his favor rests." And this Son of God would have a holy zeal for the holiness of God, and his holy zeal would clash with the sin of mankind on the cross. And he would defeat it once and for all time. He would perfectly fulfill the law the people of Israel could never fulfill, that you could never fulfill. And he would collide with sin on the cross, and God's wrath would come down and be absorbed in his body on the tree. He would rise again the third day, conquering sin and Satan and death and hell and the wrath of God. And for those whose faith is in themselves, God's wrath falls on them. For those whose faith is in Jesus, the great law keeper, the great sin bearer, the great death conqueror, for those whose faith are in that King and that Savior, God's wrath falls on him, and they get mercy. They get grace. They get attributed the law-keeping righteousness of Christ that we could never do. So we get to the end of Nehemiah, and Nehemiah's Merry Christmas to us is this. The book started out as a people preparing a place, and it transitioned in chapter 8 to preparing a place for the people. And then transition chapter 8, preparing the people for that place. But we get to the end and we realize that the entire book has been preparing a people for a person. And so Nehemiah stands at the end of the Old Testament and he says, "Merry Christmas, Christian. Glad tidings to those in Wenatchee, Washington. We gave it our best run, and we fell tragically short, as you will too. But one day there will come a better city builder, a better leader, a better lover of the people, a better law keeper. He's going to come in the form of a baby wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. We're going to call him Emmanuel, God with us. Therefore, Grace City Church, Merry Christmas from Nehemiah. He couldn't get the job done. You couldn't get the job done. That's why God sent King Jesus, and that's why we celebrate good news on Christmas. The Savior who would take away the sins of the world and you is here. Nehemiah isn't about a people preparing a place to live or preparing a place for the people to hang out. Nehemiah is about preparing us, the people of God, for the person of Christ. And that's Nehemiah's Merry Christmas to you.